Hello, everybody. Welcome to David's Life and Observation with your host, David Welch. Today's show is kind of an update show and kind of where I'm at with the case that I'm dealing with and some of the circumstances that are out there in the world. So first and foremost, right now the state of law enforcement is under high scrutiny. And that's because of you. It's because of people with cameras, people with that mindset to record things that are going down. We do have a little bit of the standby effect or the bystander effect where people feel it is more important to record something horrible going down versus intervening. Yes, I believe people should record, but also I do believe that if you witness something that is truly horrific, like 18, 20 officers literally punching, kicking, kneeing, choking, elbowing, suffocating a person, and that person's safety becomes public concern, I believe citizens have a duty, no, an obligation to intervene. Now, intervening doesn't necessarily mean getting the tussle. Intervening means voicing your concern, voicing your observation of the incident, filing complaints, calling the news, calling the watch commander, calling another agency to come check it out. You are obligated at that point to assist that individual. Now, if the person looks like they are losing the battle of life, call an ambulance. They may be too far into their situation with the individual that they may not have an ambulance readily available and on the way until it's already too late. You can make that initiation of, hey, I see something horrific going down. Cops are swinging on this guy full force, or this woman or this person full force. There's several officers on one individual. They may need medical help. Call for an ambulance. In regards to my case, I've gotten feedback with my complaint. I filed a complaint with the Copperas Cove Police Department last night. Finally filed the complaint. I was too tired of waiting for all of the evidence against the officers. I'm forcing the issue by filing the complaint. It was a pretty detailed complaint. I can make that information readily available to anyone who request that of me. If you got any questions about my case, please send me an email at dwelch9627@gmail.com. I'd be happy to address any questions you have pertaining to my case. My case is easily researchable. If you type in Copperas Cove false arrest, my videos pop right up there. Please review all the videos. Don't just watch one video and make your decision on just the one video. Watch them all. Get all angles. Get all of the dialogue as much as you can and understand why it's a false arrest and understand how the officers made too hasty of a judgment on the Copperas Cove side and why the Coryell County Sheriff's deputies were more than willing to put their necks on the line with their police report exonerating my illegal detention, saying that it was a false arrest and asserting that this detention didn't meet the medical requirements for the detention. So, I applaud their efforts. I do criticize them and have filed a formal complaint to address their failure to intervene. They are duty-bound. They are obligated under the law, under federal law, to intervene if another agency is violating my rights. The sheriff has the constitutional authority in the county. He has all rights, all jurisdiction to intervene in a false arrest. He can say, hey, let him go. You're making a false arrest. This shit won't be tolerated. And he can, address the issue at the administration level. Instead, now we're to the point where I'm gearing up to file a lawsuit. That lawsuit will be filed here in the next couple days. And I will handwrite that motherfucker if I have to, but I'm composing it now. I am getting ready to get all the necessary documentation drawn up and submitted to and file it with the court. I look forward to ensuring that I maintain my forward press on the issues, and I maintain my steadfastness in making this as public a case as possible. So, here's what I recommend to those who find themselves at odds with the law. 1 second, baby. I'm doing my podcast. Yeah, I'm working on my bike. So, if you're at odds with law enforcement, do your due diligence. Record every incident. As much as you can write or compose of the incident, do so immediately. File complaints immediately. I will let everybody know that I filed a civil rights violation with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I have filed an incident with CID in regards to the Army component of my case. I am filing, I filed already judicial misconduct against both judges in my CPS case. So there's a lot of forward momentum. There is a lot of things that would have to transpire before being final on my case. So I'm looking forward to putting more information out there on my change.org, on my petition. I got my signatures. Very proud of that. It's been shared numerous times. I have been very successful in reaching people. This podcast has actually allowed people to tune into my situation that didn't necessarily know why I have the rhetoric I do when it comes to law enforcement community. Put that back, honey. Thank you. That's Mom's. So when it comes to the law enforcement community, I am extremely critical. Now, do they have instances where they do right? Absolutely. I'm never going to negate that. I do believe that they've gotten too big for their britches and that they have leaned heavily into the criminal organization side of the things, especially with the way the law is written for them and not citizenry. However, there are instances, and if my circumstances were different, if my own testimony and my own words on September 14th were that of a man who was in distress, who, planned on doing anything, who made a decision to, harm myself or others, if that was the scenario they walked into, and, I showed signs of that kind of scenario, any sign, then yeah, they had every right to do what they did. But that wasn't the case. They didn't verify information. They didn't care. The Coryell County Sheriff's deputies did a more thorough investigation. And I, again, will applaud them of their efforts. Deputy Fox and Edwards did an outstanding job investigating that situation. It hurt a little bit, actually, to file a complaint against them. I didn't really want to, but I also felt that they had a duty to intervene in the situation. And the result of that detention has essentially had me lose time with my kids, had me lose work, lose money, cost me thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands, not hundreds of thousands. That's an exaggeration. At least $10,000 plus in money, in damages, and scrutiny, time, energy. I've faced an incredible uphill battle monetarily. In fact, I should be well into the green when it comes to where my finances are, but the total cost and the amount of effort and anguish and damages that this case has cost me has been terrifying. It's been monumental. I've, alone on just being out of money when it comes to having to go to court and not, be in the classroom where I should be. I've lost, hundreds of dollars in work and teaching. I've lost time writing my books. I've lost time doing my podcast and being with my family and, having to be integrated with the Child Protective Services, who did a great deal of lying to the court. And then the court found cause where there was none. And based on a police report that was never given to CPS, based on a police report that never gave them the excuse to do what they did because it was a false arrest. And now I have suffered because of it. My family has suffered because of it greatly. There are some situations going on in the world. There are cases much larger than mine that need to be brought to issue. We have a situation in Louisiana where we have inmates, people who have served their time and are being released days, months, years after their expected release date because of how faulty and such a failure that system is. Not only does the state steal your life, but they steal extra time that you can't get back. If you're incarcerated, you're held against your will in a box, in a cage. And if you're held there well past your due time to get out, then the state owes you. The state, the people of that community owe you time. And if you're there because of a fucked up investigation and loose evidence and wrongful DNA and everything like that, the citizens of your community, those who sat on your jury, the defense attorney, the prosecutor, and the judge all need to sit in jail. Now, the jury, I can understand. If they don't have all the information presented to them and they made a decision based on the information they had at the time, I get it. But because of science, because of information being withheld by prosecutors, or information being ignored by judges, I don't care if those judges and prosecutors are well into their retirement. They belong behind bars in a cage for the life they have taken. Because that is akin to murder. It is. Because you are literally robbing someone of their life. You are not the one that pulls the trigger. You are not the one that drives a stake through their heart, but you do so metaphorically. You do to their life force, to the contributions they could have made, to the experiences they could have had, and the family they could have created. You have forever altered their life journey. And you more than deserve to be in a cage. I don't care if you're 90 fucking years old and you're the judge who sat that bench. They need to rip you out of your old person's home and put you in a fucking cage and flog you until you die. Now that's a little much. That's a little much. Maybe just putting you in a cage and giving you the actual medical treatment that these inmates get today with the guards that these inmates have today, you won't last very long. If you're the prosecutor and you're retired, you're on your fucking yacht somewhere in the Keys, and you think you've done a great service and blah, 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 and you withheld evidence, you deserve to rot in a jail cell. You deserve to be caught and arrested, publicly humiliated, all of your cases be reviewed. And it just takes one. It doesn't take many. If you're a prosecutor and you fucked up real bad on one case, that one case should be able to nullify all of your other cases because you didn't have the fortitude, you didn't have the integrity to do the right thing the entire time. I don't care how greedy you are. I don't care if you needed a win. I don't care if those circumstances were dire. I don't care if you believed in your heart that you were doing the right thing. I don't give a fuck. You robbed someone of their life and deserve the same. Your pension needs to be stripped. In fact, you should rot in a jail cell your entire life. So, I'm speaking to all officers. I'm speaking to all of those in the system who have that position to play with people's lives. I'm even talking about county clerks who choose not to get back to people, who choose not to do the Freedom of Information Act request in a timely manner, or who choose to withhold information. City councils who've allowed shit to happen under your watch, you too need to be jailed. You could say all day, oh, I'm not intimately involved, but you are. You are intimately involved in what happens under your watch during your time in office. If something crazy happens with your local police department and the citizens are having to pay out millions of dollars to people that the police department is wrong, it is your obligation to sever that contract and contract with another agency. Maybe get more deputies, maybe more state troopers, maybe do a whole rebranding of the police department. Fire everybody. Rehire new personnel. Have another agency temporarily watch your those who you have already in custody. Wipe the board clean. Wipe the slate clean. Because it's not one apple spoils one. It's one bad apple spoils the barrel. So the whole barrel's got to go. I don't care if it's a distinguished officer who served for 25 years with an impeccable record. He allowed it to happen in his department. He or she allowed corruption to persist. Didn't file reports when he or she probably knew shit was going down. That was wrong. They had to have witnessed and been party to deprivation of rights under color of law. I believe we should be able to RICO law enforcement officers. That absolutely should be a thing. Why it's not a thing, I don't know. Any officer involved in any crime should be complicit in the crime. Whether it's murder, whether it's excessive force, whether it's perjury, doesn't matter. They are party to the crime. They should absolutely be held responsible. Being a police officer in this country should be an honored position. Should be a position of the highest possible order that you can belong to. Should be a position of the greatest service you can provide your community. But so far, that has not been the case. And I believe in my heart that a lot of people go into law enforcement with noble intentions. But we are too far gone in the criminal justice system that we currently have to allow this nonsense to persist further. The family court is the worst possible thing I've ever seen in my life. If you've seen all of what takes place in family court, especially CPS court, you will understand how our Constitution is bastardized, abused, and downright ignored by that system. I believe that we can come back from this, but there needs to be an aggressive overhaul of the criminal justice system. Wipe the slate clean. all of the FBI, all of the different intelligence agencies, all of the different police departments, sheriff's departments, prosecutors, everybody. Wipe the slate clean. Go in, physically rip them out of their coveted positions, these positions that pay more for ignorance than I have ever seen in my life. You have uneducated men and women in uniform on the streets administering law, enforcing law, but they don't understand the law. They don't read case law. They are not educated. But they're tasked with upholding the law, following procedure to a T, and we have prosecutors and we have defense attorneys and prosecutors that are spending copious amounts of time in school to be masters of their craft in law, but we don't hold that same standard to law enforcement. Now, I'm not saying all law enforcement officers need to be a doctorate. They don't need to be even graduate students. But they at least, in my opinion, need to hold at least a bachelor's degree and be subject to rigorous training when it comes to case law and understanding how to apply the law and enforce it with the best practices and the best ability. Now, if your intention is to fuck with law enforcement in order to fuck with law enforcement, because what we don't see behind the scenes, and I'll acknowledge this all day, is that there are some really dumb motherfuckers out there that are creating a problem for everybody else. There are some thieves out there, some violent motherfuckers that create a horrible taste in the mouths of officers. And we expect officers to remain mute, remain okay when it comes to dealing with what they deal with and handling with what they handle, and not get a little aggravated, a little peeved with maybe the previous call that officer was on was, extremely strenuous, extremely dangerous maybe. They're still on edge. They go to another call that's supposed to be kind of a bland situation. They escalate it because they're still fired up about what previously happened. Now, I'm going to talk all day about Manning. Maybe the problem could be is that there are too few officers to replace the ones that are out there in the field day in and day out every day. They need to be cycled through. They need to be allotted time to be on patrol, and then their fellow who just spent a hard 5 or 6 months on the beat needs to be able to go to either a different duty or just be allotted a copious amount of vacation time to really align themselves back and integrate themselves back in having integrity and honor. Because it's too easy, too quick to fall back into the, I didn't know, so therefore I deserve qualified immunity for my ignorance. When ignorance of the law is no excuse to everyone else. That shit doesn't cut it with me, it never has. That doesn't fly with me, it never will. So here's what I'm talking about. If you're in law enforcement, you need to push for major reform of how your practices are. And if your policy and procedure says it's okay to violate someone's rights, then you know it's going to be challenged. You know it's going to create a conflict. And if you have that mindset, when you get off of an aggressive or a challenging call, that you are still on edge, you need to do your due diligence and call your supervisor and say, you know what? Hey, I had a really crazy call. I need more time. I need to come back and debrief and unwind and I know you need me on this next call, but hey, if I can tag someone in that's not as busy or hasn't dealt with a tough situation that I just went through, then that's what needs to happen. Save your health, save your mental health, and save the situation that you walk into next from being an escalated situation because you were jumpy from the last call. I know all day, sometimes you have a serious bad day where you have maybe a use of force incident, or you have the use of force in the morning. And maybe it's all day of using force on individuals that are combative, that are really breaking the law, and you catch them doing so, or they're posing a threat to other people and you catch them in the act of doing so, or they're robbing somebody or they're burglarizing somebody, and then they become combative. I get it. Those days fucking happen. You can have a day where multiple people fucking spit on you, kick you, punch you. You know, I get it. But we also live in a free society. We also have the rights to be secure in our papers and effects and our property. So we are not obligated to show you ID without reasonable articulable suspicion that a crime has been, is in process of, or will be committed based on reasonable observation of their actions. You have to be able to articulate what actions they did that led you to believe that you could take that course of action in depriving them of their rights. And then after you deprive them of their rights, if you don't do a thorough enough investigation into the situation and determine that there in fact was a crime committed, or that there wasn't a crime committed, then you will be held liable, and you should. What's going on right now in this country is people are not being held liable, not being held accountable, and it shouldn't just be at the footstep of the police department. I'll acknowledge that all day. Law enforcement already has a tough gig. Those who are really, really at fault for making situations for people worse and costing their families even more money are prosecutors and judges. They actually hold a lot of the accountability and a lot of the responsibility for making the decision on someone's life. Judges, I'm telling you right now, if you are not acting in accordance with the law and you make decisions that are fucked up all the way around and everybody else looks at it, then you should be not just fucking unseated, you should be prosecuted for being biased, for not following jurist procedure, for making a bad call. Yeah, you should be held liable for making a bad call. Abso-fucking-lutely, because that person's life is in your hands. Even if they're a serial offender and they've never committed a violent crime and suddenly they're being hauled in front of you for a violent crime, that's not in their character, that there's no evidence other than the police officer's... Hi, baby. Police officer's words, not right now, honey. Police officer's words, and no witness other than the law enforcement officer. You should give that motherfucker a break, because we know sure as shit law enforcement officers lie. They lie in court. They lie on documentation. And they absolutely will lie to a judge. They'll lie to a prosecutor. They will lie to a defense attorney. Anything they can to cover their ass. And I actually like the stance that Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo said, hey, you lie, you die in his eyes. I like that stance. I like what he stands for there, because he absolutely is right in his mentality. Jenny, stop. He is absolutely right in his mentality to be that way with his officers. He should be holding them accountable, holding them in the highest regard. And he should also be a fucking bulldog if they are in the right. I agree with that. Any police chief, any sheriff, any agency commander. But don't hide under technicalities, because the court of public opinion will eat your ass up. And that, I don't know what's more of a dangerous court, the court of public opinion or the actual court. Because the court of public opinion will haunt your ass for years. You fuck up in today's day and age, you aren't just haunted for a few weeks. You're haunted for years. Especially if there's video to the contrary of something you wrote. How many times have we seen it? Police report doesn't match up with what was shown on video. Not even fucking close. But somehow, in some way, those law enforcement officers are not held accountable and not being subject to perjury. How? I'm telling you right now, if you're the city's attorney, you have a duty and an obligation to file those charges against officers that do that shit. You have a duty to your constituents, your community, and the law enforcement community by and large, the criminal justice system by and large. You owe them that. And don't think it's not going to come back and bite you in the ass, because it will. So let's talk about other things that are going on in the community at large. We have a lot of discourse with the First Amendment community, the Second Amendment community, and we as citizens should wonder why there are a subset of people that are championing our inherent rights. If we had them inherently, they shouldn't have to be activists to get them. If the law enforcement community, think about this, if the law enforcement community and the criminal justice system worked properly, we wouldn't have activists for the First Amendment. We wouldn't have activists for the Second Amendment. We wouldn't be standing so hard on our Fourth and Fifth Amendments if the criminal justice system operated the way it should. Now, just because you have the right to remain silent, just because you have the right to be secure in your persons and effects and papers, doesn't mean you can be a criminal, because they still have the ability to lie to you. They will figure that shit out. Believe me, if you have an investigation lost into your ass for any reason, and they come up with some dirt, they will file those charges. We already know. They will do that. They will look under every damn stone you have. They will look in every closet you have to unrack all those skeletons. They will find them. Eventually. A good, thorough investigator will find every fuck up you make. You keep it. Or put it on your the plate. So, again, think long and hard before you fuck up. The way law enforcement should work is there should be more fucking detectives. There should be more investigations going on. There are rapes. There are murders. There are burglaries. There are things that go down that absolutely should be vigorously investigated. Especially if there's video. If there's video, it should be very, very prompt as far as an investigation goes. One of the issues that keeps coming up for me individually as a person is the fact that I was disillusioned for a very long time on how the justice system worked, on how the law enforcement community was. Because when I served in the military, I assumed that law enforcement was going to be a community like that, of comrades, of people that had each other's backs, people that followed a specific rules of engagement when we were in theater, which we did. And were there some fucked up soldiers out there, and Marines and airmen and sailors? Yes, absolutely. But you fuck up in the military, you will be held to account. You will be found out. And it happens all the time. People in the military, and hopefully both commanders that lied on official documentation here are investigated, and that be found to be true, because that will be found to be true based on the information and the timeline of the story. The timeline of my story doesn't match anything they fucking asserted, nor has any kernel of truth that they assert at all. I have documentation, I have video, I have a lot of things that stand on my side. So, do your due diligence out there. When you see a fucked up situation, now let's talk about kind of an area that's real touchy right now, the mental health community. Now, we can say all day that the mental health community is it's a tough field because you're dealing with the mind at that point. You're dealing with the people's state of mind. You're dealing with people's behavior. You're dealing with people's understanding of the world and how they view it. You're dealing with dysfunction on a large scale. And it's hard sometimes to, in the field, make a good snap decision when somebody appears to be not doing well. And that appearance, and that could be due to many factors. But ensure that if you are a mental health deputy, you are a mental health professional, make sure that person is actually in crisis before you fuck up and call the police and start a whole echelon of things. Especially if you're a family member and you love your loved one dearly, and we have a couple cases of this already, where people make that phone call to law enforcement to seek help with somebody they believe is in a mental health crisis, and they mess up to the point where that person ends up getting killed because that person is scared for their life. That person is being defensive. And that person is defending their civil liberties. I believe tact, training, should go into every situation. If you do not have training to deal with that community, the first thing you should do is seek help to handle that situation. If you're the first on scene, and you're dealing with somebody who is dealing with a mental health crisis, it is okay to wait. If that person is posing no threat.
There's chocolate in my candy.
Exactly. Eat some more. So, if that person is having an episode, but they're in the middle of nowhere, or they're cornered on a sidewalk or whatever have you, or they're not currently doing something threatening to another person, wait. It is okay to wait. You don't have to be gun-ho hero. You don't. Wait. Wait till more people get there that are experienced. Now, if that person is chasing after somebody with a knife, yes, intervene. Use mechanisms at your disposal. That's a different situation. But if you're walking into a perfectly calm situation, and that person is showing no signs of aggression, no signs of wanting to do harm to anyone else, wait. Wait for backup. Wait for a supervisor. Have a conversation. It's okay to do so. And based on your experience, you can tell when people are trying to bullshit you. Stop for 1 second in the whole mindset of I've got to issue commands. Because that's a common theme with what's going on in law enforcement. Ask, tell, make is a horrible paradigm. Horrible. You can ask anything you want, but to tell people and make them do something that they don't want to do, especially if they inherently believe it violates their rights, you might want to be cautious. You might want to take pause with what you're doing. Because that training will fuck you over. And it'll get you messed up. That training will get you killed. If you create a situation where there originally wasn't one, that training will get you killed. What about the gentleman? I think this happened in Chicago, I believe. Kid sleep in his car. Maybe high. Maybe. Startled by law enforcement. Makes erratic movements because they are startled by law enforcement, who shines on them with their big bright ass lights. And because the person was startled, they feel justified in shooting that motherfucker 28 times. Riddling his vehicle with bullets, trying to kill that person, when that person made no aggressive manner towards them other than, hey, why am I being awakened? Why am I being startled in this situation? Let me kind of catch my wherewithal before I act. And seek cover. If by then the person wants to come out of the vehicle with a firearm, does not want to comply, take further measures. Box that person in. Don't give them an opportunity to escape. Wait till they are calm to have a conversation. Wait till they understand what's going on. And if they're just spazzing out, making erratic movements, and they're just going crazy, and that's what you perceive is happening, wait. Wait. Wait, motherfucker, wait. There is no time sensitiveness to waking a person out of a dead sleep and expecting them to follow your every whim at the very second you give it.
Hey, Daddy, my piggy bank.
I know, we got your money in a different piggy bank. I'm going to leave you guys with this. We don't have activists or people who do activism for the sheer fact that they do activism. They do it because they recognize a flaw in the system. They do it because they recognize that there's no accountability with those who enforce law and those who practice law for the state. We know there is no equal footing in the criminal justice system for an individual. We know this. So don't sneer at activists. Don't criticize those who are fighting for something you may not even understand or believe in at the moment. Read up on the situation. Do an investigation. Be a critical thinker. I can't say this enough. Be a critical thinker. Wait till you've assessed the information. And the information isn't just Fox News. The information isn't just your favorite news network or program. The information is multiple viewpoints, multiple readings, multiple visual representations, multiple audio representations of an incident, event, or circumstance that you can interpret, analyze, and then be able to speak on. I'm not talking out of my ass with ignorance of the criminal justice system as a whole, because I'm currently dealing with it. A lot of people have intimate experience with it, so they're doing everything they can to work within it. And there's a very good documentary. It's called How to Survive Prison. I encourage you to watch it. Have a great day. Please tune into David's Life and Observation. And if you can, also tune into Create-A-Cast. Create-A-Cast is another show that I do about creative writing. If you have any input onto the show, give me a call, 801-388-7083. If you have any inclination to reach me by email, it's dwelch9627@gmail.com. Have a great day.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.